All right, Kiss Army, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. Thank you for giving us your time today and letting us into your head. I hope we don't do any damage. We're just a bunch of Kiss fans and we talk Kiss. So come along for the ride, you've got nothing to lose. All right, welcome to the KissFAQ podcast. I'm your host, Julian Gill. We've got 4 of the 5 with us today. Marcus Almighty Mark. Mark was first in the door. Lonnie St. Louis Kiss.
What's up?
And straight from Earthquake Landia, the voice of reason.
Yes, I'm shaking.
Ken. Yeah, so Daniel's playing hooky. We are still celebrating Kiss Unmasked today. The Unmasked Refocused episode. We're going to do a deep dive into this album, into all aspects of it, but I think a little bit of an explanation is due, so watch this. Been asked, hey, why aren't you celebrating the Unmasked album? Short answer is yes, of course we are, on this show episode. The long answer follows.
Is this the right one for an argument?
I wanted the scheduling of the show to coincide with the actual release anniversary, and our current Saturday schedule allows us to hit much closer to that real date. That date is not May the 20th, as widely celebrated elsewhere. Sources vary for the official date, and the official date may not marry up with the realistic release date. That is the date the product actually appeared on store shelves. So let's start with Kiss Alive Forever. For the most part, there are a few questions about the veracity of the research that went into that project. Copyright records were probably referenced for the date provided in that book. The copyright registration for the album notes a publication date of May the 30th, which I also used for Mass Hysteria. Registrations for the individual songs on the album note May the 28th. Okay, that's fine. The date of publication on the registration specifically relates to the date copies were first placed on sale, sold, or publicly distributed. That covers a variety of scenarios. Next up, let's look at Record World's May the 17th issue. That issue incorporates reporting of the April the 1st contract signing and notes that the album will be released in late May with the single to follow. That's a bit far in advance of reality, and reality was subject to change. I guess late May could also include May the 20th, to be fair. Next, let's look at the contract briefly. By its terms, Kiss had agreed to deliver the first album of that contract's minimum recording obligation, MRO, within 60 days of the contract being signed. So Kiss had until June the 1st to deliver the album to Phonogram. But of more interest is the part of the obligation that notes that no more than 13 months could elapse between the delivery dates of 2 albums. That plays a part in the problem surrounding the next album, Music from the Elder. In 1981, new product played an important part in Polygram Australia's income potential, and they reminded Kiss that the 1981 MRO date was June the 16th, 1981. That date means that Kiss had delivered Unmasked to Phonogram on May the 16th, 1980. Delivered the masters, not released. Even with the rush Neil Bogart's Casablanca label could move in releasing product, there's no way Phonogram transferred the masters, assembled production stampers, prepared 8-track and cassette duplication copies, and approved test pressings in 4 days. Funnily, one of the test pressing vinyls I've seen is impressively dated May the 19th. But back to reality, or at least my perception of it. The May the 31st issue of Billboard magazine details Peter going solo, and also notes that Unmasked was due to be released on Sunday, June the 1st. Yeah, Sunday's a bit weird, but then again, that date is in alignment with the copyright documents. A final source I have to hand is one that I really don't want to use since I previously referenced it to disprove the release date of the debut album. But a document can be inaccurate in one thing 6 years previous, and correct in another, just 3 months prior, since the telex was dated September the 5th, 1980. Whatever the case, the telex notes a release date for Kiss Unmasked as June the 1st. That's pretty contemporaneous evidence. Other mainstream news blurbs also note the album being released the last week of May, first week of June. And by the end of the first week of June, press articles are noting that the album had been released that week. The nice thing about all this, it's a continuous process, open to reinterpretation, refinement, correction, and enhancement. It really is never-ending. The reality of the specifics around any album's release date aren't life-altering. Play the album, or not. Enjoy the album, or not.
I was just getting interested.
Sorry, the 5 minutes is up.
Shut up, Julian. Get back to the show. Yeah, okay. I thought I'd edited that down a bit, but that's a long-winded explanation as to why we're celebrating at the end of the month rather than the middle of the month. Let's go back to first opinions and first encounters with Kiss Unmasked. Lonnie, what do you remember about your first encounter with this album?
I got it late in the process of picking up the back catalog. And for that reason right there, it wasn't very visually inspiring for me to pick up. It, I looked at the song track. I was like, oh, I really don't know many of these. It wasn't a priority for me to go out and buy. It was one of the last albums I picked up in my process of picking up the back catalog, and just that story itself dates itself because there was no going to Best Buy and, oh, look, here's 15 different CDs. Which one do I want today? I mean, there's no such thing anymore. But it was late. I was probably, I'm gonna say 16, maybe 17 when I finally got it. Am I supposed to talk about my impressions of it too?
No, we'll come back to the next part of the question about it after we go around. Ken, what about you? As an originals guy, you were here live in Technicolor when this album dropped.
It's in Technicolor. Black and white. Oh yeah, the thing is, I remember that I didn't know when it was coming out. I don't even remember any publications or saying it, the time period. Though I checked, always checked every time I went to the record store, which was weekly. I would go at least weekly, at least once a week. And this was at Tower Records in Concord. And it was probably the first week of June or so. And I checked, the Kiss side, section, and all of a sudden this weird looking album cover was there. I was like, what is that? And I pick it up and, oh shoot, it's a new Kiss album. So yeah, it was, I always looked for the new stuff or any kind of Kiss stuff anyway. But the thing is, yeah, again, I didn't know. I really didn't know it was going to be out. Just like this Dynasty, I knew the day it was coming out and I went there. But for Unmasked, I had no idea.
Mark, mid-'80s guy. Or did your sister torture you with this one as well?
No, she didn't torture me with this at all. In fact, I don't even know if she even has this album. Even to this day, I don't even know if she has this record. But much like Lonnie and I think Ken, well, not Ken, because he was there right when it happened, but me and Lonnie probably have this similar story. It was the last thing I got for my collection of this. I mean, I saw it a lot of times at the record store, but always kind of like passed on it and grabbed something else. Because again, just the cover was a little odd. I was so used to seeing them like the four guys like in some shape or form on there, and to see it in a cartoon thing like that was a little odd for me. But I got it eventually and didn't like it when I first got it. But over the years, it's really grown on me. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Yeah, I wish I could say it had grown on me. I don't remember where it fell into getting the catalog, but again, because it had a colorful cover, it was probably soon enough. I mean, has it remained in rotation for me? And Lonnie, we'll come back to you and the other guys on that. No, it's always had about the same reaction for me, going back to when I first had it. I'll just tell you a great story. I finally got it on record soon after becoming a fan and getting into collecting, and I got a used promo in a record store in Johnson City, New York. And it was marked down because it had Sharpie on the front. So I took it home. I was like, oh, what's a promo? I have no idea what that is at this stage of my collecting life. Why is this Sharpie on the front? I can't read the stuff underneath. So I got I think it was lighter fluid or something, and erased the Sharpie. Only later on in my collecting career did I realize that I'd erased an Ace Frehley signature from the front of an Unmasked.
Oh, nice.
An idiot. So I don't remember. I always get good feelings when I hear Is That You as the first song off that album, my first experience with it, and that's held up well to this day. Lonnie, how's the album held up or changed in your estimation over the years?
It was It wasn't really surprising when I got it and listened to it. It is a companion to a certain extent. I mean, for Dynasty, they're going poppy. They're going in a different direction at that point. I wasn't surprised of how it sounded. But it is catchy. A lot of the songs are catchy, and I did enjoy that. I initially I actually enjoyed it more than Dynasty. Just in my 16-year-old, 17-year-old brain, because the songs were catchy and like, I could, the second time through, you could sing along to a lot of them right away. But when I listen to it now, I still enjoy it. It's not an album that is really like heavy in rotation for me at all. If I feel like listening to a Kiss album, I don't. Oh, let me grab Unmasked. But when I listen to it, it's still enjoyable. But I do enjoy Dynasty more than Unmasked, as opposed to my younger self.
Yes, I want to thank everyone who's joining us live today. We always appreciate your comments during the show. I'm not going to be able to keep an eye on the comments today because I've got a lot of multimedia to it feels like a lot to me to juggle throughout the episode. So thank you for joining us live and for your support as always. Mark, how's the album held up for you over the years?
Well, the thing is, when I bought this record, I can't remember the exact year, but I know it was like late 80s, early 90s. I'm going to say like maybe like 92, 93 is when I actually finally got this record. And by that point, I was really heavy into like Metallica and Judas Priest and stuff like that. So when I picked this one up, the first thing that immediately struck me was how weak the guitars sounded compared to the music I was listening to at that time. And I guess I can say this for most of us, that as we've gotten older, our listening skills have developed and changed over time, and what we like about certain songs have changed over the years. And for me, as a songwriter, I appreciate these songs much more from a songwriting perspective than I ever did when I first bought it. When I first bought it, it was just like, oh, the guitars are weak, dude. Next. But now when I come back and listen to it, it's much better in my mind, and it has gotten up on my top 20 listings considerably, because I think the songwriting is actually very good on there. It has a very similar sort of vibe in some ways to Dynasty, not as good as Dynasty in my opinion, but there's similarities in there. But I think for me, it's actually held up pretty good. In fact, it's gotten a much better opinion from myself over the years now than it did when I first got it.
That's interesting. We'll see where that goes as the conversation develops. Ken, what about for you? Has it changed in any way?
I don't think it's really changed so much. I know when I got it, when you get a new Kiss album, you throw it on and play it there, a whole bunch of times, and it was like the album of the summer. So it was good. But for the music, the direction, I was kind of surprised they kept kind of going that poppy direction from Dynasty, though I don't think the production of the album is as good as the production on Dynasty. But it falls, in the middle of the pack of my top, 20. It's probably in the middle somewhere, or a little bit below middle.
All right, so the way that we do these refocused episodes is the guys provide a bunch of numeric rankings. We start off with, the production, the cohesiveness, the cover art, single selection, and just overall taste for the album. And then we'll dig down into the songs themselves. And it's just a way to organize the conversation and give the album a final ranking number at the end, which we can then compare with other albums that we've put through the refocus sequence. So it's not highly technical. It's just an organizational way. And as we go through this conversation today, I'm going to be jumping in with some sound samples and some live cuts from the tour just to help set the conversation. So Mark, let's start with you, because I got to say, I don't know whether you're having a hot take or a senior moment right now, because you gave the album overall the highest score by far of anyone participating in this conversation. I was actually pretty shocked by how highly you ranked this album for its production, cohesive, cover art, singles. Can you explain how? And by the way, it's 45 points.
Explain yourself.
Explain yourself, because that really seems very
45 at
unmarked.
45. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, like I said before, I mean, how I rank records, 10 years ago is different than how I rank them now. I mean, just what I think are important things back then maybe are not as important thing to me now anymore, right? The production of this record, I don't have a problem with it. I know a lot of people seem to say that, oh, it's too dry and it's too overcompressed and blah, 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 blah. But, those records are usually like that. Like New York, like forget New York for a minute. Those albums in general that came out around that time period, a lot of them were very dry. A lot of them had those kind of drum sounds. I mean, Anton's drums kit on this record sounds a lot like the records that were coming out from that time period, and especially out of New York. I mean, I saw so many great documentaries about recording records in New York City and the vibe in New York City overall. Like when you talk about bands like Steely Dan and all these other bands that come out from that time, they were very much into dry production and stuff like that. And Vinnie Poncia very much was a believer of that kind of sound for them. Now, I think Dynasty did it better, because while it was dry, it also had a nice crystalline top end to it that kind of made it shine a bit better on Dynasty. And this one doesn't have it as much in there, but I think that it suited it to my listening. There was nothing in there that really kind of made me cringe too much, because when I go back and think about the time period and think about how things were back then it does make sense. Would it be a sound that I would have picked when I was recording? Definitely not. But I wasn't making records in 1980, so who knows what would have happened at that point. But for me, when I listen to it, the production doesn't bother me. And if I remember correctly, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
You gave it nearly perfect marks for production.
Yeah, because I think that it suits the songs that they were doing. I think. I mean, the only thing I would have probably changed a bit was just the guitar tones a bit. I wouldn't have made them, heavy like Metallica or anything like that, but I would have maybe made them just a little bit more, just a touch more grit to it. Not much more, but because they were going for an obvious sort of pop rock, formula. And, you're not going to put, Slipknot guitars on a pop album. It's just not going to really work that great, So I think he did a good job. Now feel free to take out your guns and your tomatoes and fire away.
No, Lonnie, what about you? I mean, production-wise and in terms of cohesiveness, you're pretty positive, it seems.
Yeah, I think production-wise, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I mean, it's not terrible. It's not great. I can't give it a 4 or 5 because I don't love the production on it. I want something a little ballsier from a Kiss record than what we get here, but it's okay. It's not awful at the same time. And cohesiveness, I gave it a 4 out of 5 because, well, it doesn't like jump up and down where, this song's really tough and this song's really poppy. It's the whole album is pretty much on the same wavelength. But they knew what they wanted to accomplish with this, whether you agree with it or not, but they had an agenda with it. And this is what we want Kiss to sound like in 1980. And they accomplished that. I mean, I can't give it a 5 because I don't love it. But I mean, as far as what they wanted to accomplish and what they wanted the album to sound like, they very much achieved it. But production wise, I think give it a 3 because it's fine, but it's not terrible and it's not great.
Ken, you think this is a very cohesive album?
Yeah, it's very cohesive. I gave it a 5 out of 5 on cohesive because it's all sounds and the production and the sounds of the music style. It's all fits together. It sounds all the same. But as far as production, I gave it a 3 out of 5. I think the production should have been more like, if they're going to stay with the pop, they should have stayed with the Dynasty. Otherwise, I would have went somewhere else with the production. I wouldn't have kept Vinnie Poncia at all. if it was my choice, but that's the way it is. We want more heavier rock albums, like Lonnie said. As for the cover art and that sort of thing, yeah, that could have been a lot better too. Are we talking about that too?
We'll come back to the cover.
Okay, let's go with that for now. But yeah, my total score for the overall, where Mark was what, 45? I was 28.
Yeah, Mark was 45. You were 28. Lonnie was 24, and I'm 18. Production.
Wow.
I've got masses of issues with this album.
Julian.
Yeah.
You Kiss
I'm a Kiss fan, not an Unmasked fan, though I like it in points. I think the production is just blah. It's well produced, but there's just too much polishing on the album that it makes it bland. It's taking too much of the dynamics out. As Mark said more elegantly than I ever could, the difference between Unmasked and Dynasty is what Mark said. And that's why I gave it a 3. Cohesiveness. It's all over the bloody place. It's only cohesive in its mediocrity. And it's everything that was wrong with Super Kiss thinking manifested. When they start recording this album, it's under the delusions and insanity of the Casablanca era with cocaine flying off trays. And then Casablanca implodes in the middle of recording this. So it goes from becoming just another Kiss album thrown out there for Casablanca to ship 2 million copies of and persuade everyone it's an awesome piece of amazingness, to becoming the first album of a new record deal with new overlords. That's a pretty big shift for an album to undergo during the recording, to go from just another album into one that actually has meaning. And I don't think it caught up. The cohesiveness becomes an enemy to that, to me, because it doesn't have any real focus. So,
Wow.
Mark, those tomatoes are coming my way, not yours.
Wow, that's like.
Well, I mean,
Really?
I wouldn't. Look at. I'm not going to. Surprisingly, I'm not going to
Don't
argue hardcore about it, because for somebody who thinks the Destroyer is the biggest turd that's floated on the toilet bowl in a long time, then
Still don't get it.
I'm not gonna argue if people don't like Unmasked. You know what
Graphic.
I mean? So, but I don't know. I didn't get to say really what I said about the cohesiveness, but I think it is cohesive. I'll just leave it at that.
Well, let's talk about the cover. Is the cover a positive or a negative? On a cassette, I could barely read the text. It only looks good on a record, and when it's on a LP size, and when it's printed on freaking foil, like Ken's copy that he's holding up, it looks absolutely spectacular. When I was doing Mask Hysteria, getting copies of the actually incomplete panels that were used on that, it's a beautiful piece of work in terms of art, but it's a very confused piece of work in terms of an album cover. So it can be two things at once for me. Lonnie, what about for you, the cover?
Yeah, I mean, I bought it on CD, and even on CD, it was it was difficult, really, to
read the
make out and read and like, oh, okay, this is what's going on, and that's one reason why I didn't buy it until the very end. I think it just wasn't striking to me, and like, oh, like the cover art of Crazy Nights looked a whole lot better than the cover art of that. I'm like, well, I'll buy that this week, and maybe I'll come back and buy something else next week, just the cover, like, and it's still bad. It is, and you can make a lot about I still say they stink and how controversial that was at the time, and why do I want to buy an album from my favorite band that says I still say they stink on it?
Exactly.
Who rubber stamped that and said, yeah, let's go with that? That's a great idea. I think it's, and for as visually exciting as Kiss is, and the other great album covers they've had, that they went with this comic book little deal is still just goofy. And why call an album Unmasked if you're not taking the makeup off? I didn't understand that when I was record shopping and buying the back catalog either. I thought, am I going to open up the album and they're going to be unmasked on the inside of it? No, that wasn't the case either. So, the album cover's terrible. I gave it a 2. I should have probably even given it a 1 because it is awful.
Ken?
Yeah, I gave it a 3 out of 5, and that's probably generous.
Wow.
It is pretty generous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, well, look here. Can you see this? No. This
No.
is a 8-track cassette, 8-track or whatever.
That looks still sealed.
It is still sealed. I
Wow.
never
Open
opened it.
Open it live.
I found it somewhere at antique place like 20 years ago, and bought it for like 99 cents.
Really?
Yeah, I can't read this thing. I mean, it's kind of, when I saw it, I picked it up. I thought, this is kind of weird. I like cartoons and comic books and stuff like that, but it's just kind of a jumble for an album cover. And like Lonnie said, I still say they stink is like, wait a minute, I love Kiss, and you're putting that kind of crap on there. It doesn't make any sense. The original artwork that was done before the actual final was actually better, or the better story.
Vampira?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, Vampirella or whatever, Vampirella. That one was better than this. The story, it made more sense, and it worked. But anyway, I don't know. It's not, obviously not one of the better covers. At least they have images of Kiss, and cartoon images or whatever, instead of nothing at all.
Mark, cover.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't like the cover at all. I mean, I gave it a 2. So imagine if I would have gave it a good ranking. I mean, that just would have been a very high ranking album. But I didn't like it for the main reason that Julian actually brought up, because my initial purchase of it was on cassette, and it is difficult to read. I mean, even back then when I was way younger and you have way stronger eyes, it was even difficult to make out some of the stuff then. Could you imagine, somebody who just gets in a band who was like maybe 60 years old and buys that in cassette, he ain't going to read anything on that, right? But it's a very weird cover. I mean, I just don't understand why they thought this was a good idea. I mean, I remember reading that Paul said that he'd like to go on record to say that this was a bad idea, and that it was Gene's idea for the album cover. So, yeah. But even that, I mean, while it's better, that's still not that great an idea, this cover. I mean, why not stick with what brought them to the party, as they say, them on the cover, nice and big, so you can see them, in their costumes, which is what people want to see. That's even if it's the same costume from last year, people want to see Kiss right up front, full blown. I mean, I think that's why the poster people enjoyed it, because it's a nice big, image of them that you can see. And I think even that would have been better as an album cover than the one that they used. But, it's just not strong at all.
We talked about it on the show way back, but we talked about, it being like a gatefold and having the big poster type image as a gatefold wrap around. Then on the inside, you could use 2 full panels for the comic kind of thing.
That would have been, much better. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Better idea.
But it's kind of pandering towards 7-year-olds too much in terms of being a comic. That seems to align.
That's true.
Musically, they're going for a more mature, diversified audience, but on the cover, they're going for the kiddies. So the kiddies are going to buy it because it's a comic and don't care what the music sounds like. It just seems like mixed wires in terms of who they are and where they're going. And
Nothing
that's
dangerous.
just a cover sketch. There's another colorized one, which I can't find right now, so I can only do too much live. Before I forget, and this was pointed out on the Ken Sharp feature with Burnt for the tour in Europe, and it was something that I'd never noticed, and I'd never even recognized it when doing Mask Hysteria. They used elements of the cover for the advertising on tour. And just look at this one. Let's see how well it shows up. This is one of the Gene elements. Look at the mask he's holding there. I never noticed that before.
Yeah, Peter Criss mask.
Yeah, that was really interesting to have that pointed out on the FAQ.
It's a message.
So just before I forget completely of mentioning it, again, that was one of the fun things to come out of the feature on Kiss Online with Burnt that I found very interesting. That Paul has a Paul mask, Ace has an Ace mask, and Gene's holding Peter's head, essentially. So,
interesting.
All right. So next part of this is the singles, I believe. The single selection in the United States, because in Europe it was all over the place. Talk to Me was the first single in England, followed by What Makes the World Go Round. Holland had Is That You released as well. Shandi was, all over the place in terms of being the first single. So it varied from market to market. So just in terms of, this is the only time we really get to focus on the US aspect of Kiss Unmasked is with those singles. So Shandi is the first single, Tomorrow as the follow-up. Lonnie, was that good smarts or not so smarts?
Shandi is the first and Tomorrow is the second. I gave it 4 out of 5. I think they got the right songs, but I would have flipped them. I think Tomorrow should have been the lead track and the video, and not Shandi. Shandi's a good song. It's decent. But I think Tomorrow being much more poppy and more catchy and sing along, I think it would have gotten more radio airplay. Not that Kiss ever got a lot of radio airplay, but I think that it could have been better. And I'm not saying that if you flip these singles, there's a US tour, but I think that Tomorrow would have been the better choice for a lead single and Shandi. But I think the songs are correct though. So I give it 4 out of 5.
I agree with Lonnie. Mark, what about you?
Absolutely 100% agree with Lonnie. I mean, I think that while I've never been a fan of Shandi as a song, I do believe though that, from how they were approaching this record and what their strategy probably was from the higher ups and everyone else, they probably thought that was going to be the one to, put the album on a rocket and send it up to number 1. But I think Tomorrow is way better song overall. I always thought that's the standout song on the whole record is Tomorrow. So I think, like Lonnie said, they picked the right songs for singles, but I would have, like Lonnie, reversed the order of the releasing of them. And you know what really bothers me about Shandi? If you listen to the opening tom fill, that doot doot doot, the snare drum is on. You can hear the snares rattling as he does that. Doot doot. I was like, ugh. Why would you turn the fucking snare off the snare drum? Like, it just ruined that fill for me. I don't know. That's being really minutia and ultra nitpicky, but that's always bothered me about that song too.
All right, Ken, which Gene song should have been the first single? Should have been the second single.
I would say no, but really, I give it a 3 out of 5 because again, Tomorrow is the easiest radio-friendly song to choose as a single. That's the one to go with. You got to go with that one. And Shandi, I would have not released that as a single. I think that is a huge mistake.
B-side.
It could be a B-side, yeah, for all B-side of the first single. The second single, I would have chosen "Talk to Me," because Ace was kind of he did the best on the solo albums, and I mean, he did well on Dynasty, and I think he deserved the single. And I think that, I don't know how well it would have done. It still would have, probably flopped. But I would have went with that instead of Shandi. I think Shandi was a major decision on a sinking ship that was going on at the time, starting with, solo albums and going down to Dynasty and so on. I'm probably going to piss someone else off like I did last week about I Was Made for Letting You. But I just want to show one other thing. So, yeah, those singles, I didn't. Tomorrow is the right choice. Should have been the first one. Again, Talk to Me, the second one. Shandi, no. Just one thing I was noticing, I was looking at that 8-track cassette. The sequencing on that is interesting because it starts with Is That You? And then the second song on it is Torpedo Girl. And then it goes to Talk to Me. And then it goes to Naked City. And then What Makes the World Go Round. And then Shandi is on program 3 to lead on program 3, followed by Tomorrow. And then Two Sides Are Coming behind that. But anyway, I thought sometimes these 8 tracks
they got to chop it up because of the tape structure.
The length that will fit on each of the tracks, right? So that's interesting. I never really paid attention to that.
No, and sometimes you get things, they stretch things out. There are edits specific to 8 tracks if you go down that rabbit hole, which becomes quite interesting. But we're not that interested in Unmasked to go into that rabbit hole today.
Yeah, not that.
We've all talked about, our overall feelings on the album. So in this first section, again, Mark had 45, gave it 45 out of, I'm not sure what the maximum is.
60, I think.
Yeah, it might be.
And
5,
you
10,
probably
15,
have
20. Yeah, 60. Thank you, Mark.
Mark, just quickly, Mark, when you did the 45 score, you don't pay attention to the other Kiss albums or how you've ranked them or compare them at all?
No, like we've said many times, when this can change next week. Again, Kiss records and how you feel about them, I don't think it ever stays static. I mean, the only thing that ever has for me is Rock and Roll Over is my favorite album of all time, followed by Creatures and the Debut. Those 3 are always being consistent, and it's always been the worst record has always been Destroyer, and then everything else kind of shuffles along. You know what I mean? Sometimes one week I might like this record more or that record more, but no, I don't think about the other rankings of it. I just, how I feel this week when I was listening to it is how I feel.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to get into the songs. Just a quick recap. Mark on 45 out of 60, Ken 28 out of 60, Lonnie 24 out of 60, and Julian 18
Julian,
out of 60.
Send all your mail to Julian, please.
No, again,
You're
it's an
hating
album by album case, and I've listened to Unmasked a lot in recent weeks. Obviously, the Shandi song story dropped publicly this week, and I've done Torpedo Girl and Two
You
Sides
did a
of
book.
the Point. Yeah, and I did Mask
That's
Mysterious. I've listened to this album plenty. I do appreciate the album, and I do overall like it. I don't hate any album in the catalog, unlike Mark.
Yeah.
All right, so song rankings. There are we talk about. There's 3 measurements that go into ranking each of the songs. The lyrics is out of 5, melody is out of 5, and then taste is you either like it, you give it 3, you don't like it, you give it 1, or you're meh, middle of the road, give it 2. There are no zeros, though. I wanted to give a couple of songs zeros here.
Wow.
And with that, in 11th place on a whopping 28 points, You're All That I Want is by far the least favorite song on this album. Lonnie, let's start with you. Why?
Because it's not great. It's really a throwaway song. And we talked about cohesiveness earlier. I think that You're All That I Want kind of stands out as maybe like, well, that's a different way to end the album. I don't think it fits in very well with what they were doing the rest of the way. Lyrics, I gave it a 3, and I think that's generous looking at it now. It's okay, and I don't love it. I don't hate it. I'm probably going to say that a lot as we go through these songs, so that I don't love it and I don't hate it. Melody, I gave it a 3, and that might be generous too. But I kind of like the version that ended up on the box set better than this. I think this. Yeah. I think they kind of got it wrong with what they put out versus what else they had recorded. I kind of enjoyed that version much better. And taste, I gave it a 2. It's okay. And I ended up with a 12 for the song. And as I'm talking this through, I might be the most generous with my rankings.
Oh yeah, you certainly are.
You're pretty generous.
Wow.
Ended up with a 12. That might be, again, as I'm sitting here thinking about it, as I'm talking it out, as opposed to just doing those rankings, I think, man, I actually was pretty nice in this song because I don't have a lot of good things to say about it. So, it's okay, but it's not great. So it ended up with a 12. So let's see what you guys have to say. You guys are probably a little more critical than
Ken was actually quite nice about it too.
Ken,
gave it 12 as well.
I gave it a 12 also, Lonnie. The lyrics, whatever, 3 out of 5, they're okay, whatever. Melody, that's where the problem is, I think. The chorus is I call it undercooked kind of chorus, not thought out enough on the chorus, because it's kind of just "You're all I want, you're all I need." It's kind of bland and nothing really happens on it. So that's the big problem with this song. It's my least favorite song on the album, which makes sense. And the taste is 2 out of 3, because this is not what I want to hear from Gene on this. I don't hate it, but this is not the Gene style that I want to hear.
All right, Mark, it's you and me versus those guys up there. And on my screen, those guys are both above us, so they're all fancy pants.
We are above you.
Down in the trenches here, Mark and I both gave it 2 points. So, Mark, express your hate.
Yeah, I disagree about the lyrics being okay. The lyrics are absolute shit on this song. Okay, now let me explain to you why. This is the same
Say what
man.
you really mean.
So this is the same man who has the gall to say, when I go out with a woman, I don't spend a lot of money on them. I rather than go to the movies, I'll just take them back to my apartment and I'll send them home in a cab. This is also the same guy who writes, Dr. Love and all this stuff, and that's fine. That's his writing style. And he was always dissing Paul about the fact that, he always wrote lovey-dovey songs. Well, guess what, Gene? He just wrote the most syrupy piece of crap on this record is his. That "You're all that I want." That's Gene? Really? That goes against everything that he's ever said about women and how he thought about it back then.
We're talking about money.
So he's full of shit, and I know Ken will defend him to the dying day because it's Gene Simmons, his hero. The man he worships, right? So, but it's like it's shit. And musically, there's nothing good about it either. I mean, maybe the other version is slightly better, maybe a 1.5, but it's not a good song at all. I just don't understand why they could have just dropped it. End of Torpedo Girl, and it would have been much better, I think. It's just a terrible. The lyrics are the thing that mainly bother me about it, because it's just so hypocritical of Gene to write a song like that, considering all the things that he's ever said about, songwriting in the band. So, it's crap. It's total garbage. I'd love to hear what Julian has to say.
Well, my notes are simple. I hate this song. But unlike Mark, I will say this. I think it's an absolutely fantastic vocal by Gene. I think he sings this very, very well. It's not to my taste, but he does a fantastic job with the vocal. And it's well recorded. Melodically, I don't like it. I don't like it musically. There is an element in this, apart from the bland guitars. The guitars sound horrible on the song for my tastes. But there's something that sounds like a wood block. And I find it so incredibly annoying. I don't know whether it's a rim or something. Let's see if I've got a sound.
Like this?
Yeah.
You're all that I want. You're all that I need. You're all that I see. You're everything to me. You're all that I feel. You're my dream come true.
That could be a click.
You're my everything. No matter what you do, you're all that I want.
Yeah. Could be a belief.
But I hate the syrupy granny music vocal, the harmonies. While I say Gene sings it very well, the sickliness of it just is not to my taste. Whether that's a click, whether that's some other percussive element coming through, it drives me up the wall, and immediately I'm seeing Will Ferrell doing the Blue Oyster Cult
thing, the cowbell.
from Saturday Night Live, and it just drives me up the freaking wall.
The best,
not always though.
The best part of this song, Julian, is when Paul comes in and does additional vocals later on, which is surprising to me. So it makes me think that Gene was kind of checked out on this, or not fully there in the studio when they did this, and Paul added some vocals to.
I mean, this has been kicking around for a few years. I believe this was originally demoed in like 77, just those two guys. Now, this was a song that was performed live during the first part of the Unmasked tour.
That's crazy.
Bernd, if you're still with us, this is why I wanted you on the show. It was to talk about hearing these songs live. But for everyone else, this is You're All That I Want Live, 1980.
You're all that I want.
apologies for the audio fidelity of that while we've got
Interesting.
soundboards for the other songs. That was the best as I could find for You're All That I Want. And Gene slipping into Cookie Monster mode in the middle of
Yeah.
singing You're All That I Want, my log in your fireplace, you're all that I need, gymnasium.
It's like he's the Nutty Professor, and he's like going back and forth.
Right. That's
I
good.
mean, props to them for actually trying that one live, because dynamically, it's a pretty tough sell for Mr. Codpiece to be singing, basically Romeo and Juliet. So thumbs up or thumbs down for You're All That I Want live.
I can see why they dropped it.
Double thumbs down. That was
still not good enough. No.
Yeah. All right. So I had all of that song prepared, but that's as much as I could tolerate of it. Sorry. Let's move on into 10th place on 47.5. So You're All That I Want on 28 was way back there. Definitively our least favorite song on the album. Our second to least favorite song on the album, 47.5 points. Shandi. Australia, I would like to deeply apologize for offending you on behalf of the group.
Not here.
Mark, Shandi, talk about it.
Never liked it. I mean, I think this is another one of my very low scored one. I think it's like 3. I gave this one. Just.
But you said it should have been a single.
Not good. Yeah, but it is. Yeah, but it's the right song to pick. But it doesn't mean I have to like it. You know what I mean? Just because something is correct for the time doesn't mean that I have to enjoy it.
Yeah.
There's lots of songs that are top 10 singles that I can't stand. What's that Mr. Big song? You're the one who wants to be with you. You knew that was going to be a hit, but I can't stand that song. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with this. I mean, it was probably what they thought again to be a big single, right? And I just don't like it. Just everything about it is just not what I like about Kiss songs in general. I mean, I'd even much rather hear, what's that song that he did on Paul's solo album? That sappy one again, the ballad on there. I'd rather
Hold Me, Touch Me.
I'd rather listen to that honestly than Shandi. Shandi is just pretty bad. I've never liked it. It just doesn't sit well with me. That's all. There's nothing. I guess there's nothing really about it that I can specifically say like, I don't like the keyboard parts or whatever. But it's just it's not a good song. I don't like it.
Okay, so Shandi, the song story tells it all about being a mix of Joe Walsh and the Hollies version of Bruce Springsteen's song. So go check that out if you're so inclined. I just find it cloyingly saccharine, sickly pandering. There's something about it. I don't like the guitar, which is weird because the rough mix of the song is way better before all the layers start getting added on with the keys, with the background vocals and the harmonies, and it starts getting overdone. The original version, where it's very basic and stripped back, is so I actually like it a heck of a lot more, and I was surprised by how much I liked it. But there's one part in this, and again, I don't know whether it's the vocal or whether it's some of the embellishments, and I don't like Anton's drumming on this album at all, unlike Bob Kulick, on Alive 2, where he was told to play like Ace Frehley. Clearly Anton was not being told to play like Peter Criss on Dynasty, but particularly on Unmasked. There's a lot more coming into his playing. And let me play this little sample.
And we should say goodbye. Say goodbye. Yeah.
I hate that. I hate the vocal phrasing that comes through it when he does that part. I mean, I just don't like the sentiment. It's a great song. Don't get me wrong. I just don't like the vocal. So you guys disagree. Lonnie and Ken are like the adults today. All right, Lonnie. You rank it higher. It's Mark and I who are ruining everything today.
I ranked it pretty high in for the songs on Unmasked, I ranked it pretty high. I ended up with 24 points for this song, which is tied with my favorite song on the album.
Wow.
Lyrics I gave it 4 out of 5. I think the lyrics are relatable. I think it expresses a situation that someone might find themselves in. That, yeah, I got it, and this, and I just, you're waffling back and forth, trying to build up the nerve to do it, and I think it's relatable. At least it is for me. Melody wise, it's not bad. It's catchy, so I enjoyed it. I gave it a 4 as well. I mean, I sat here and said that tomorrow. I said they got it right with the picks for the single, so I'm going to give the song high rankings. If I said it should have been, if I agree it should have been a single, and for taste, I gave it a 3 also because I do enjoy the song. I think it's fun. I think it's a relatable type song, and those the songs that kind of strike a chord with you, and it does for me. So I end up with 24 points.
Yeah, I agree with one of the reviewers I mentioned in the song story, and some of the commentators in the live audience today who said it was a great summer song. I do agree with that sentiment. That Shandy's a cool summer feel song. Ken, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I like it. I like the song, even though I said it shouldn't have been a single. I mean, the lyrics I gave it 4 out of 5, and the melody I gave it a 5 out of 5. It's a great melody. I understand that. But for my taste, I gave it a 2 out of 3 because that's not again, it's similar to that last song with Gene. It's not the style I'm looking for from Kiss and from Paul. So, it got an 18, which is not bad. It's not the best, but it's pretty good.
It's much better than the 2.5 I gave it. So there we go. Let's listen to Shandy live, 1980.
Here's a song about a girl. Now this girl's got a name, but I want you all to know this girl could be any one of you girls here tonight. Her name begins with an S. Her name ends with an I. Her name's Shandi. I just can't pretend no more. I'm running out of line. Loving you is killing me inside. Every time I follow wants to end it, something in your eyes won't let it. Shining, not the place of forever. Forever, say goodnight, no. But you know me very well, and I know you. You can tell me goodnight. Say goodnight.
I think that's much better live. I like that way more than the studio version. And there was another soundboard that surfaced, I think last year or the year before, that sounds absolutely spectacular. That's from Auckland, 1980 board, because I hate the sonics of the Inner Sanctum recordings, where you can also hear a decent version of it. Is that better live, Ken?
Yeah, it's a little better live. I like a little bit.
Mark, more tolerable?
No, especially those backing vocals. My God, and I have to agree with Muffin Man. He's talking about that Shandy's a great summer song. Dance the Night Away. That's a great summer song. Okay, not Shandy.
Lonnie?
Van Halen.
I think it's a little better live.
A little.
A little.
You guys don't seem convinced. All right, let's move on. Next song up. In 9th place on Only slightly ahead of this on 50 points is the first Gene song. No, the second Gene song. She's So European.
Mm.
All right, let's see. How did people rank this? I need to pick who goes first on this one. Ken. All right, it's a Gene song. Ken, go first.
I've always liked She's So European, you know. It's just is. I just like the song. I like the melody of it. I think it's a good song by Gene. 4 out of 5 for lyrics for me, because it kind of tells a story. He usually doesn't do that kind of stuff. At least not that kind of story. Melody, I give it a 3 out of 5. It's not the best melody, but it's not bad. It's pretty good. And this is something that I like to hear from Gene when he's doing this poppy kind of stuff. So I gave it a 3 out of 3. So it gave it a 21 for me, which is, pretty good. But since I first heard the song, and when I first played the album, I've always liked the song.
Lonnie, you ranked it pretty positively as well.
Ended up with a 4. I gave it a 4. I was doing some work around the house last weekend. I was listening to a lot of Unmasked, and I just caught myself singing this song quite a bit.
See? Yeah.
So I was like, I like the lyrics. Again, I don't listen to Unmasked a lot, but as I'm listening to it, I'm like, oh, I do enjoy it. I can't rank it too low if I caught myself singing along to it that many times listening to it. And melody, I gave it a 3. It's not great. It's not terrible. It's middle of the road for me as far as melody goes, but it is catchy, which I talk about that a lot when we rank these songs, and I enjoyed that. And taste, I gave it a 2. I don't love it. I don't hate it. So ended up with 14 for it. It's okay. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I knew I was going to say that a lot today.
Yeah, this actually went down very well when I think they did this live on the Kiss Cruise, one of the later ones, and it went over pretty well because, again, it was a rarity, and I think Gene had done it. Mm-hmm. But my complaints, I'm pretty similar to Lonnie on it, and again, we come back to cartoon covers and more AOR material being in conflict. Their audience doesn't know shit about Saint-Tropez, brass beds, champagne. Who the fuck is Gene writing for?
Amen.
You write for your audience. You connect musically with your audience, and there ain't no demographic in the Kiss audience that was coming from that Hollywood kind of mentality, even though he was trying to be more introspective as a demon. So I think it's a really good song. I do dig it. I like it. There's great bass work on this. There's some really, really good bass on this album across it, but also in particular on Gene's songs. And this is one where those keyboards, which I have bashed elsewhere, they work very well musically for me. And the guitar stays chunky. And I don't have any problems with Anton Fig's drumming on this song either. Mark, I've set you up. Here you go. Your turn.
Wow, I think everything that you said that you liked about it, I dislike about it.
I already gave it 12 points.
I don't remember what I gave it, but I don't think it's very high at all. I think
Pocket
it's like
change.
what? Yeah, like 4. Did I give it?
3.
I think 3.
3.
Yeah. So, again, the lyrics, Julian hit the nail right on the head. Who is this guy writing for? Pink champagne and all this shit. Like, come on, this is not Gene. I don't understand. Like, where did Gene Simmons go? They have a ghostwriter for his lyrics on this album or something. This is not Gene Simmons lyrics, okay? And the keyboards. I mean, while I'm not a opponent against keyboards, in fact, some of the songs later in this record, I think the keyboards are done actually really well on this record. This is not one of them. I find them very clashing. I just don't like the way they sound on this song. I mean, overall, it's not a horrendous song. I mean, I think it's definitely better than You're All I Want, but not by much. I mean, I just don't. Again, I think that Gene is in his lost. Yeah, that could be something to do with it. He was in love with Diana Ross. Like, maybe he was just so in love, that it affected his songwriting. Because, man, it is not the type of lyrics that I come to expect from Gene. Even at his worst lyric writing, I think that there's still elements of Gene's sort of, male chauvinistic side in them all the time, right? But not in these songs. It's all but disappeared, and we've gotten this sort of, prim and proper Gene, suit and tie and good morning, how are you, ma'am? Can I get the door for you? That's the kind of Gene Simmons I'm envisioning on this record. And it's not the Gene Simmons we were used to, or at least not the Gene Simmons I was used to. So just doesn't sit good with me, this song, at all.
No, you weren't that mean to it, so I don't think you'll have hurt anyone's feelings. All right, next up is 8th place on 61 points. What Makes the World Go Round. And it's very weird, this song. I used to love this. I still love the single, the English single, with the great picture sleeve of Ace, just Ace and his smoking guitar. A fantastic photo. But it hasn't aged well for me, unfortunately. And it's a really good pop song. It could be a great rock song, but the problem for me comes with the guitars are overpowered by the reverb from the drums. And again, Mark can take issue with my perception of breaking it down musically, but this is one where Anton overplays the hell out of this song. It's just ride, hi-hat, too busy, just too much of the percussive elements rather than just the basic beat, and it doesn't work with the song. Here's where we get problems vocally for Paul: falsetto. And while he had done it, obviously I Was Made for Loving You had falsetto. There are multiple songs now with falsetto, and you wonder why. You have Just a Boy in 1981. Bob Ezrin heard the albums that they had worked on prior and heard new vocal phrasings, Paul doing falsetto and Bee Gees disco shit, and go, great. Well, Just a Boy, why don't we do a song all in falsetto? So it's kind of a harbinger of doom lyrically. So this just has not lived up to expectations for me. Lonnie?
I've listened to this quite a bit last week and this week, and it's a song where, again, I caught myself singing along to it as I'm listening to it. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed this song more than I remembered, actually. So I kind of the opposite of Julian, where he doesn't enjoy it as much as he used to. I actually enjoyed this more than previously. Lyrics, I ended up giving it a 3 for lyrics. I mean, they're middle of the road type of lyrics. But melody, I gave it a 4. It was just so catchy as I was listening to it, getting ready for this episode. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. And so because of that taste, I ended up giving it a 3. I enjoyed this song. Ended up with 21 points. Much more enjoyable re-listen to it than I anticipated. It actually, this song more than any of the other ones really surprised me how much I enjoyed it.
Yeah, Ken, you mirror me with 14 points, and we're the same across the board for like the lyrics.
Yeah, the lyrics are, it's a good story, whatever, for the lyrics. Melody, 3 out of 5. It's just okay. It kind of doesn't work. It's kind of blah for me in the sense of its melody. And my taste is similar to like one of those other songs, 2 out of 3, because I think Paul can write a better song than this one. And I think it was kind of this one felt like it's kind of forced in a way, this song. So, it's not one of my favorite. It's not horrible. They're all somewhat catchy anyway, but it's not the type of song I want to hear Paul doing or coming up with. So, yeah, 14 was kind of low. My second lowest.
Yeah, Mark, you gave it 12 points.
Yeah, I mean, I actually don't mind the song. I mean, this is one of the examples of the song that I was talking about where I didn't mind the keyboards in this. And I think Paul's melodies are good in this vocally. I find that I enjoyed it. I mean, I don't take issue with some of the other things like the drumming. I mean, I think the reason why it's so upbeat enough, why I kind of find it moves enough is because of Anton's drumming. I mean, if he would have kept it more basic, it would have just been sort of blah drumming. I like the fact that Anton kind of pumps it up a bit more because that's what gives it its drive a bit more. You know, you got to hit that ride, you got to hit that hat a bit, to give it some energy to it. And I think that it needs it. Otherwise, it becomes, just an okay song. Where I think this version of the song is really good. I mean, is it his best song on the album? No, we're gonna get to that, I'm sure, but it's good. It's much better than I thought, or better yet, I think it's aged much better than I thought it would have over the years. I think I really find this one to be one of the better songs on the record for me.
All right. Moving into 7th place on 67 points. Easy as it seems. I'm thrilled that this is pretty well up the rankings because I was worried that it was going to be way down at the bottom because it's always been a guilty pleasure for me. I love this song. There's something about the vibe. The bass line is infectious. And I don't know supposedly Paul plays bass on a lot of his songs. I don't know what the deal is there. Whether that's true or not, I'm not good enough at reading the musicality. But it's good lyrical storytelling of a scene. I think the keyboards get a bit heavy on it, a bit overused, but I get why they're there. This is, to me, a very unique song in the Kiss catalog, and it's right there with like Jungle for being totally kind of bass driven from a different perspective musically than the band is known to operate in heavy metal. It's near the top for my picks for the album. Ken.
Yeah, I like the song. It's pretty cool. Like you said, the bass drives it, and it's kind of different from Paul's other written songs that he normally does. But yeah, the lyrics I gave 4 out of 5, and melody, I like the melody. 4 out of 5 there. Again, it's just my taste. 2 out of 3 for me on that one. That's the only thing that brings it down is, again, I want to hear more of the heavier rockin', raw kind of stuff that Paul can do, and not the poppy stuff. So that's the only thing that brings it down for me.
Lonnie, you're positive about this one as well.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's a different type of Kiss song, as Julian mentioned. But it's okay. I mean, the lyrics is a 3. They're not terrible. They're not great, but it's kind of what Unmasked is to me. And melody, it's kind of catchy, or it kind of sticks with you a little bit too. But taste, I gave it a 2. I don't love the song at the same time though either. I can't really carry the banner forward or carry the torch for it. It's okay, but it's not a go-to Kiss song for me. I can't remember the last time I just said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to listen to that." You know what I mean? Let's turn on Easy as It Seems. It's really not a go-to song for me, but, it's just okay. So I ended up with 12 points for it.
Now, Mark, you were nodding kind of vigorously while I was talking about some of the things I like about it. You're also very positive about this song.
Yeah, I like this song. I think Paul, again, I think he knew what he wanted on this record. I think Shandi might be the only exception to that, where I think he might have, catered a little too much to writing a hit in his mind. But this one, I think, is really good. I like the bass and drum intro to this. I think it's locked in really good, dude. And I kind of think it's Paul doing the bass on this. I mean, Gene has a sort of style of playing that he does where you can kind of tell it's him. He does a lot of like finger slides and a lot of little nuances that's in his bass playing that's not present on this. But I think it's very good, the bass playing on here. And the vocals are very strong, I think. There's a lot of keyboards in here, especially that kind of thing. And there's a little, loud in the mix, could be a little bit lower in there overall. But man, it's not bad. I mean, again, I think the thing that people are forgetting here when they're making their comments is that, you're talking about Kiss, you know, in relation to now and what they did later and stuff like that. But you got to remember what Kiss was doing then and what the time period was like then and what other music was kind of surrounding them then. Yeah, sure, they had a lot of heavier stuff too, but they were trying to follow up their, you know, their somewhat successive dynasty. You know what I mean? They, after all, don't forget they had a gold single from "I Was Made for Loving You," so they thought that was the right mine to continue oring from. You know, and getting their stuff from. You know, so I think that this song is definitely suits the album. And I really enjoy it. I think Paul did a good job.
Oh, hey, you're still here, watching or listening. Why don't you hit that subscribe button or click the like one? And if you want even more, click on the join button on YouTube. Thanks for your support. All right, in 6th place.
Startled me.
Yeah, me too. At least I remember to do it this week. On 70 points, the lead-off track from the album, Is That You? Now, it's not technically a cover. I've always loved this song as a opening track on a Kiss album, even though they didn't write it. Ken, get us started with Is That You?
Yeah, Is That You always felt wrong to me. Even the first time I heard it, it didn't sound like Kiss. I thought it was kind of a strange song. I mean, it's okay, but I just thought it was the kind of the chugging style in the song. It just sounds so different. To me, this song is a lot different than the rest of the album. It doesn't really fit, even though the production's there. But I don't know. It's just I never really cared for it fully. I thought it's probably one of the worst. Maybe their worst lead-off not lead-off song, but beginning songs, lead-off songs on their albums. So it's really a strange one for me. So, but lyric-wise, and they didn't write it. It was 4 out of 5. Interesting kind of song, lyric-wise. Melody's pretty good, 4 out of 5. But my taste, again, 2 out of. I'm surprised. I almost want to give it a 1. Because to me, it's not Kiss. Though they made it kind of their own, it's not Kiss. So two out of 3 for that one.
All right. Well, Lonnie, Mark, and I all gave it 18 points. Lonnie, start with you.
I gave it 3s across the board. Lyrics, I gave it a 3. It's kind of catchy. I enjoy the lyrics to it. They're it's kind of fun, and the melody it's catchy to me also. I enjoy it. I agree with Ken though that it is a very odd choice to lead off an album. It's not really what you would expect from Kiss as a lead first track on an album. It's different in that sense for sure. But I do enjoy the song. I gave it a 3. It's different. It's so different for a Kiss song. But it's still enjoyable to me. I know there's songs on here that I enjoyed listening to that surprised me, and Is That You is probably one of them. So it's still a fun song. I enjoy it very much.
Mark, 3s across the board for you as well, for similar reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I like this song. I mean, I'm trying to understand my friend Ken here about how he thinks it's not a Kiss song, because I mean, how can you say it's not a Kiss song? I mean, this is more a Kiss song than She's So European ever is. Same with All That I Want. This is more a Kiss song than All That I Want is. It's much more a Kiss song. I mean, at least it has some energy and there's some drive to it. The lyrically, it's a little, not the greatest lyrics, and it doesn't have like the most stellar guitar solo or whatever like that in here. But overall, I think it has a good drive to it. It's not like they opened up with a ballad or something on the record. It's not I Stole Your Love. Let's make that clear, right? But it's definitely not any of the other songs I mentioned before. I mean, it's a straight ahead rock song, Paul's given it some good, belting there, singing there, and I think it fits just fine to me.
You gave it a 18. I gave it a 16. I'm only 2 behind.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's why I'm not saying.
Crashing it.
I'm just saying because you said it doesn't sound like a Kiss song. That's
it never sounded like a Kiss song to me. I don't know why. The first time I put the record on, I thought it was a kind of strange song. It just didn't sound
possible, yeah.
To me, after listening to their prior albums up to that point, it just didn't sound like a Paul kind of written song or whatever. I think Paul's vocals on this song is great. It's cool.
Yeah,
it's a good song. But
I wasn't dissing you. I wasn't dissing.
No, it's all right. It's okay.
Paul's vocals. Well, that's into my thoughts on this song, because I've always liked this as the opening track. From the first time I heard it, it's one I really like. I think Jerry McMahon wrote a scorcher. It's got attitude. It's got angst. It's got some teen attitude. So I like the punchy bass. There's some Jerry Lee Lewis, some killer piano that you'd hear out of something. And and Nothing to Lose or Christine 16 going on there. The guitar chords, I just love the single guitar chords that go through it. So I've always liked it, but I have a problem with one part of it.
Your reputation's in the bathroom, it's on the wall and down the hall. I hear you cheating with my teacher after school. Tell me what you do when you know you always get the boys you like. Play nice and stick them with your knife. Take off your insecure disguise.
All right. The first part of that vocal, you hear his ending phrasing is very Elvis-y.
Yeah, Elvis-y. Old. It's early, late 50s, early.
There's some weird, there's some 50s phrasing going on. Yeah, so some 50s rock and roll elements that are going on. That's the only part of the song that I find a bit weird that jumped out at me. So he's and I talked about it already. He's doing a whole lot of vocal experimentation on this album with his phrasing, with his delivery, the mix in of the falsetto and the highs there for the lead in to the chorus. It's really interesting what they're doing as a group on this album with Vinny. So again, Elvis Stanley. Yeah, exactly. Let's go to the live version of this. This, of course, was performed throughout all of the tour as well. So here's some of Is That You live, again from Auckland.
Here's a song. This one starts the latest album. A little bit of rock and roll. This one's called Is That You? 1, 2, 3, 1.
All right. One other point about this that I've talked about, guys, is who the fuck are they writing for in 1980? They've lost track with who their audience is. They've got a comic book cover. They've got kids in the audience. They're writing about Europe and wine and Saint-Tropez, and then they're swearing in the song, the lead-off song on their album, Bitch, which, to 7-year-olds. If you were 7-year-olds in America and you say bitch, you're getting paddled. So, Lonnie, live. What was your take on that as a live song?
I think it works very well live. I think the guitars in that sound better live than it does on the album. You know, I think it worked really well. I mean, and what's funny is that none of these songs got any play on any subsequent tours that followed. They were scrapped right. They did not withstand any kind of test of time live. But I think it works live though.
Ken, live. Give it a verdict.
Yeah, I like the up, the tempo. It improves it, and the live sound gives it, a heavier feel, which improves the song for me.
Mark, do you deem it worthy?
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I find interesting about this is you can tell, even in 1980, where they were at a second sort of like pinnacle of popularity, at least in Australia, and that the level of the production from a live concert perspective is so different from what it was like years later, like even like getting into like Revenge and all that other thing. Because I mean, that whole thing that was happening on stage, here's the next song, guitar being plugged in, and then also, you know, the song is, you know, he's talking and you hear like rap, like they're testing guitars out, and that would never happen in later concert things, like this kind of buzzing noises and checking this out. And like, I'm surprised they didn't hit a drum in between, like checking a snare drum or something, you know, in between. Like, it's just, the ruckus on stage was just unbelievable how different it became later on in their stage production. But live, it was good. It's raw. It came out pretty good. And, you know, again, it just made me kind of chuckle hearing all those little random noises in between his talking.
Yeah, Hysteria was so massive in Australia. I think fans should be demanding that a unreleased soundboard is an off the soundboard from the Antipodean part of the store, because there are better sounding soundboards available. And again, the Aussies really had a massive moment in 1980 with this album. I know it was big in Europe as well, but not on the scale of the insanity that was Hysteria. So I think that would be a nice way to commemorate that tour. And don't use those freaking Inner Sanctum tinny shrill recordings. Just use the organic rock sounding one that they do have access to. All right, moving on into fifth place on 72 points, Mr. Fraley, talk to me. And let's see, who do we start with here? It can't be me. We are actually Mark, 21 points. You're pretty good for Ace on this album. Talk to me.
I've always loved this song. I mean, the one thing I do vividly remember is when I bought this album, you know, I listened to the first song and I was kind of like, okay, it's pretty good. Then I heard Shandi and I didn't like it at all. But when this came on, I was like, wow, okay, this is cool. You know, it had that open G tuning, you know, a la Keith Richards. And I thought Ace's voice sounded really good. You can tell the difference in confidence in his vocals just by the tone of it on these songs. Like, you know, Shock Me is not a bad song. Don't get me wrong. It's a good song, but his delivery, the phrasing on the song, you can tell that he's comfortable with being a singer and being recorded now, you know, and it definitely shows on here. Great song. I love the whole guitar playing feel of it. Anton and him, I think, always had good chemistry together as far as guitar and drum interaction going on. And I mean, one of the simplest parts of the song is one of the parts that I love the best, is that whole ending part, to talk to me, and then the counter voice there, I just wanna talk to you. That whole section there, I thought was fantastic. I really like it. It's almost like a 60s throwback song, but it's really good. I think that Ace really knocked it out of the park with this song, in my opinion.
Lonnie, you mirrored Mark in terms of points for Talk to Me. Why?
Yeah, I gave it 21 points as well. I thoroughly enjoy the song and always really have. I agree with Mark, and I remember listening to this album, like, you get to Talk to Me. I'm like, oh, an Ace song, cool. And like, oh, this is really good. And I enjoyed I'm really happy that we've gone through a lot of these rankings and we haven't gotten to any of the Ace songs yet. This is the first one. I'm glad that the Ace songs, we are all at the top, because in my opinion, the Ace songs really save this album. I mean, Ace is really in his zone here after his solo album and Dynasty and this. He's really writing some great songs, and Talk to Me is one of them. The melody is great too, because it's one of those songs that, like Mark was saying, that talk to me back and forth, and it's fun and catchy, and it really kind of, like I said, the Ace songs really kind of saved this album. I gave it the taste is 3. I thoroughly enjoy the song as I do all the Ace songs on this record.
I think with like Dynasty, Ace's songs give it a rock and roll legitimacy that the other experimentation that Paul and Gene are doing, Gene investigating his inner demon with his therapist, and Paul, going off in pop meanderings and trying to expand his horizons. Ace just stays very meat and potatoes rock and roll. But Talk to Me, I don't think is a good song. It's pretty basic. There's way too many talk to me's repeated throughout this freaking song. And it's like, stop talking to me so much. It doesn't need to be a 4-minute song. Evidence.
Stand the frustration, so talk to me. Talk to me. All I want is a little conversation. Talk to me. Talk to me. All I want is a little conversation. Talk to me. Talk to me. All I want is a little conversation. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me. Wow. Talk to me. Come on. Talk to me. Talk to me. Talk to me.
All right.
Okay,
So,
Julian, you prove your point.
did I prove my point? No, I also had
Doesn't
another
bother
point
me
to
at
make about
all.
that. There's way too many talk to me's, but I love what he's doing with Anton here. I've accused Anton of overplaying, and Anton being, used as a substitute for Ace having to do other shit. But all these drum sections where he's actually doing drum solos or going through all these fills and patterns through that section is a really cool little element that's added into this song. I don't know. Maybe it needs a few more talk to me's, like a disco talk to me remix. Who's up next? Mark?
You did, Mark.
No, I said my point.
I think it's me.
Ken, it's you. Talk
Is
to me.
that you? Yeah, Talk to Me. What's the name of the song? Oh yeah, Talk to Me.
Oh, she's
Don't talk
There
to
it
me,
is.
Mark.
There.
Come on now. All right. Lyrics, I gave it 3 out of 5. It's an Ace lyric, your basic stuff. Melody, I give it 3 out of 5. And taste, I give it a 3 because I like, Ace's quirky, weird stuff he comes up with, like this. And his other songs that he's done on this also. I think, yeah, it does kind of, there's a repetitiveness of Talk to Me, but Rock and Roll Night did that too, and some other Kiss songs where they say the same words over and over as part of the chorus. Save Your Love is very similar, yeah, in that way too. It kind of goes on forever at the end, but it's still a good song, and I still say it should have been the second single for the album.
No, at least it was a single in Australia. It was a single in England, Britain. All right. That's enough of Talk to Me. But it was also performed live. So here's the live version. And let's get your thoughts on that.
We're gonna do one for you now. This is off Unmasked. This is one featuring Ace Frehley. This one's called Talk to Me. When I see you, girl, you turn my head, you make me dizzy. I get a good vibration. When I look into your big blue eyes, I start to quiver and shake. I get a strange sensation. When you walk by me, you strut around, you make me crazy. I get no relaxation. Talk to me, talk to me. All I want is a little
Talk to Me live. Mark, any good? What's your verdict on it live?
Yeah, I think it's good. Personally, it's one of my favorite songs from the farewell thing that they did in Tokyo when it was Ace and Eric Singer in them.
Yeah, good point. I've forgotten about that. Ken, verdict live.
Yeah, I think it's good. Still sounds good.
Lonnie.
Yeah, it definitely works well live. It's very enjoyable.
Yeah, I think it's the best of the Unmasked songs live. For my taste. All right, moving on into fourth place. Another Ace song. Imagine that. 73.5 points. Two Sides of the Coin, which is a little bit quirky. But Ken, you really liked this one. Gave it 18 points. Threes across the board.
Two Sides of the Coin. Yeah, 333. I think I did that with Talk to Me also. So it's kind of similar. These, Ace's songs are very similar in a way. His style of writing. It's a fun song. Two Sides of the Coin. 3 lyrics. Yes, 3 melody. My taste is 3. Again, very similar to Talk to Me. I like it about the same, and I rated it. I ranked it the same with the exact same score. So I enjoy it. I enjoy all Ace's songs on this album. I think they're all good songs. So I'm gonna leave it at that. You know what? I think I even did this other song too. So we'll get to that one. They're all exactly the same for me. So he's steady.
Lonnie, you also ranked this highly. You gave it 21 points, just a little bit more than Ken.
Yeah, I mean, I similar to Ken. Ken ranked all of his Ace songs 18. I ranked all my Ace songs 21. Actually,
That's funny.
I guess I enjoy all of them. There's consistency from Ace. Again, Ace's songs really really help this record out quite a bit. Lyrics of 3, melody of 4, taste of 3. Enjoy it. It's a fun little song, kind of a forgotten fun little song on the album. I think Talk to Me gets a lot of juice from people that people gets a lot of praise, but I think Two Sides of the Coin is really good and really fun. It's kind of a hidden little gem on the album.
Yeah, for me, this is Ace's best song on the album because it's fun and quirky, but not silly, not a joke song like Torpedo Girl. Musically, it's great. I just don't like the breakdown section where it goes into just the kind of acoustic, the guitar phrasing with Anton doing all that fill shit again. In this context, that's a lost opportunity for an Ace guitar solo. Just in that break section, though I do like Anton's drum work there. It's like he heard it and said, I don't need to do a solo now. So, but it's still for me a top.
Let's go have a drink.
Yeah, we're done here, So,
For a break.
Mark, you were substantially behind us in terms of this is like a meh song for you. It seems.
I mean, I like all the songs that Ace did on this record, but I mean, I don't like it as much as Talk to Me, but it's not a bad song. I don't know, why it would appear that I don't like it. Maybe numerically, I guess it just doesn't look as strong, but I think it's good. I think he did a good job on it. That middle section, I think you exactly nailed it on the head there, Julian. I think that when he heard that section, he just thought, it was a good spotlight for Anton. And also, if you think about it, it wouldn't have been something too good to solo over, I don't think. It would have sounded a little haphazard, a little sloppy over that kind of a thing. And to do something for a guitar solo there, he would have probably had to do something different drum-wise, and I don't think that Ace wanted him to change that part. So I think that's why we got what we got there. And it's funny, we were talking about how Anton how he plays, and he does a lot of these fills and stuff like that, and how people said that they never really caught on that that Peter wasn't drumming on these records. I mean, this album alone should have been a red alert that this is not Peter Criss on drums. I mean, his drumming is markedly different than anything Peter Criss would have did, especially on songs like this.
Yeah, we weren't there though, Mark. You and I, at least as fans. So it's kind of weird.
I was much later.
Yeah. So now everything's kind of revisionist when we talk about these albums. So it's one of those strange things. Then again, I got it wrong with Psycho Circus. I look back at that review I wrote in '98. I'm like, eek. So I got everyone for two sides of the coin, right? So we can move on, because in third place, it's yet another Ace song. Ace's songs are all bunched nicely here at the top, and this is on 78 points. Torpedo Girl, Stupid Fun. It's so Kiss. It's so Ace. It's so good. Musically, it's really good as well. So I'm not surprised that it's there. It's silly. It's very silly, and it's a nice difference to some of the serious stuff, you know, the demon therapy. Mark, I'll go back to you for Torpedo Girl.
Yeah, I like the song too. I mean, I don't think I ranked it as high as, you know, Talk to Me as well, but I do like this song. I think the introduction with the bass and drums is catchy. You know, definitely not your typical bass and drum introduction to a Kiss song. And even that lick that comes into it, it's a pretty intricate kind of riff that he plays in there, and rhythmically it's very interesting. All those little sections he does, and it's definitely one of those songs that I think Ace wrote and didn't really think too much about what he was going to do vocally, because you know, in the studio you can do whatever the heck you want in the studio. You don't have to worry about playing guitar and stuff like that. But I think that also accounts for why this song is being played so rarely by him, because the one or two times I have heard him play it, it's difficult for him to play. You can hear him. He skips a lot of words. He misses a lot of things, and it's because it's not very easy to sing that vocal melody over the guitar lines that he's playing with there. So, but on record, it's a good song. Like you said, it's very, you know, kitschy, funny. Something that you would definitely expect from Ace Frehley. So I think that's why everybody likes it so much, including myself.
Lonnie, you also ranked this the same as Mark again?
Yeah, it's a fun, like stupid fun little song, and it's very enjoyable. When he did like a medley of this in like 2008 when he came through. When I got to hear it, it was you know, really surprising and really fun, and then like the Kiss fans in the audience just ate it up. You know, like, wow, we're really playing part of Torpedo Girl here. You know, but it's a stupid little fun song, and I enjoy it every time I listen to it. So I ranked it highly. You know, it's a great little Ace song.
All right, Ken. Final words on
Torpedo Girl. This is kind of like Ace's goofy period, because it's a far cry from, you know, Shock Me and Parasite and all those kinds of songs. But it's a funny period of his songwriting. I think when he's trying to write, you know, these catchy pop songs, he kind of gets goofy in his style and his lyrics. But I love the bass line. I like the background vocals on this certain parts. I find it really cool what they did with the song. So, but yeah, another good song from Ace.
All right, we've reached the top two. Everyone knows what the winner is probably going to be, but I'm very surprised that Naked City comes in second place on 96 points. That's a substantial increase from the 78 of the last position. I'm going first on this one because I absolutely freaking love this part of this song. There's no Jaco Pastorius in there, but that is fantastic bass to my ears, where he lets the note ring, where he mutes it, where it's picked, just solid through, just the combination of techniques there on a very, very simple bass line. I mean, that is not rocket science, but execution of something simple, so perfectly done, elevates the song for me. And Naked City, it's just one of those songs that grabs me every time. We go from calling Dr. Love to Almost Human to A Demon in Therapy. It's a thoughtful gargoyle on Naked City, but it's mature. It's good, Gene. It's a terrible demon song, but I guess that's the point. It's a great song that just to this day, I'm really happy that this came out near the top and that no one else ruined the voting. So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. Mark, you ranked this. You ranked this very highly.
Yeah, this I have to say, Gene, this is near perfection for you as a songwriter. This is a fantastic song. I've always loved this song from the first time I heard it to now. It's probably one of my favorite Gene Simmons songs that he's ever written. The bass line is perfect. That sound, it has just enough bass and just a hair of distortion in it, that kind of crunch to it, that really makes it stand out in the mix. And anytime that Gene Simmons plays a song that he thinks he did a good job on, you can always tell because his volume of his bass is just a hair louder than it would be in one normal mix of any other Kiss song. He kind of stands out a bit more, and he deserves to be in this song. Great bass playing. I love the counter guitars in there, that dan, 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 that's underneath there. And then the ones that follow the bass line are great. Just the construction of the song was so well thought out. And Gene singing again, what a great job he did on this song. The vocals are really well done. The lyrics are at least a bit more interesting. It's not sappy. It's not overly chauvinistically male. It's just something in the middle, sort of. And I really enjoy everything about this song. I mean, it is absolutely what they would say now, that what's that big line out, chef's kiss. That's what I would guess this song would be when you would compare it to most of the other songs on this record, pending one.
Yeah, and it's a balanced song, apparently. He just basically nicked it, and he really liked it musically. But if he had to execute the bass, he nailed it. Lonnie, obviously we all rank it highly.
Yeah, it's one of the standout songs on the album for sure. And really, it's so different from Gene, but enjoyable at the same time. That it's not the Cookie Monster demon type of song, but it's very good and very enjoyable and just very well executed on all facets from the band. It is definitely a standout. And I agree with Julian. I'm glad that it came out where it did in all the rankings.
Ken, you must be very happy that Gene's songs came ahead of Ace's. A Gene song beat 3 entries into this equation.
It doesn't matter, but I love the song. I actually probably should have. I give it 4 on the lyrics. I probably should have given it a 5, thinking about it, which would have bumped it up higher, I think, but a little bit. I give it 4 out of 5 for lyrics, and melody is really cool, really good. And my taste, 3. I love the song. It's the kind of song that I want to hear Gene sing, at least when he's doing more of the poppier kind of stuff. It's just a solid song. It's like someone said, I think it's one of the heavier kind of feeling songs on the album. From the other ones, maybe Is That You is somewhat heavy, but Naked City is always been a standout, and it's a tie. There's 2 songs that tied for the best song on my list, and this is one of them, and the other one I'm sure we're going to get to it next.
Yeah, we are indeed. Number 1, I guess it's no surprise, Tomorrow is king of the Unmasked album for this panel today. Could be different tomorrow, but it's substantially the winner on 106.5 points. Lonnie, get us started with Tomorrow.
Yeah, it's super catchy. We talked about it just kicking off the show about the singles and how most of us, if not all of us, said, yeah, it should have been the lead single off the album. It should have been a clue that the song was going to be the consensus winner. It's very catchy, very, catch yourself singing along to it type of song. Very, very poppy, really just shows where it's really the song that really shows what they wanted the band to be, what they wanted the band to sound like at this point. And it rises up above everything else on the album, in my opinion. So it's good, it's fun, and really kind of an overlooked Kiss gem, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think head bopping. I cannot hear this song and not start bopping my head. I think it's also another great summer song. It's another song with great bass on it. It's nearly perfect with the exception of the hand claps and the keys just go a bit too far. Sometimes less is more, I guess. But you know what I find hilarious? It's not written by Gene, but there are moths and flames in Tomorrow. So
that's funny.
Yeah, Paul was there first with the moths and the flames. Ken.
Yeah, great song. The first single, which I agree with. When I first played the album, this is the song that I enjoyed most when I first heard. The first few times, I couldn't get this song out of my head. It's so catchy. So it should have been definitely the single, which it was. Well, no, it was there, but Shandi should have not been the single. Again, it was a big mistake. I think they could have potentially had a hit. I really think they could have had a hit had like I Was Made for Loving You, had they released it as a single, as the first single. But they didn't, and it's kind of an afterthought now, unfortunately.
Not for Mark. Mark gave Tomorrow perfect points. The only one of us did it perfection.
Perfect.
Yeah, this to me is absolutely perfect. Top to bottom, beginning to end, it is fantastic. There's nothing on this that I would remove, change, anything about this. This is just pop perfection, in my opinion, on this song. I'll go as far as well as to say that I've talked about this song on numerous other podcasts and with lots of other musician friends and people that I know in other bands and stuff like that. And this song and Wouldn't You Like to Know Me are two songs that other bands and musicians I hear who consistently say that they wouldn't mind doing a cover of it on their next record or upcoming album. Those two songs are constant. You'd be surprised how many times I've heard them say Tomorrow and Wouldn't You Like to Know Me as a song that they would love to cover on a record that they would be doing. So I think that while it's not mentioned very often in amongst maybe Kiss chats or on the message board or so on and so forth, but within a certain section of the musician base, some of these songs are probably more well regarded than you would probably believe them to be, and with good reason. I think that it's very well written, melodically very strong, and it's just the most important part is it's just catchy. You cannot listen to this song and not have it echoing through your brain for the rest of the day. It's just impossible. It's that well written. Fantastic. Thank you, Paul, for writing it, and Vinny for doing a decent job on it production-wise.
Yeah, so there we are. Let's see if I can just quickly share the final rankings for this. So, sorry, just decided to do this right now. All right, so in 11th place, You're All That I Want. 10th, Shandi. 9th, She's a European. 8, that border should have been white. That's very yellow. What Makes the World Go Round. 7, Easy as It Seems. 6, Is That You? 5th, Talk to Me. Two Sides of the Coin. Torpedo Girl, Naked City, and of course, tomorrow. Let's put something else that's colorful up for our wrap up. So now we've been through the album. What went wrong for Kiss in 1980, do you think, that made it struggle to get to gold? They didn't tour the States. They did a single show at the Palladium, which was Eric Carr's introduction and where they'd been rehearsing for the European tour. What's wrong with Kiss in 1980 with this product, in your mind, Lonnie?
I think they're just going in the wrong direction. If you listen to other stuff, you listen to Back in Black and some other things that were going on at the time. I think Kiss is just they're looked upon as, I think they were looked upon as too poppy. I think that the disco vibe of "I Was Made for Loving You" rubbed some hardcore Kiss fans the wrong way, and they were viewed also as a kiddie band, as a just a band for kids. I mean, I think that people went to those Dynasty shows, and it wasn't cool at the time to be going to a show and a 9-year-old be sitting next to you. Where I go to the AC/DC shows, well, it's me and my buddies and people of my age group going to the show, and I think that it just rubbed the hardcore Kiss fans the wrong way, their sound and how they were marketing the band at the time.
Ken, you were there.
Yeah, I was there, and I was not happy that not about the album itself necessarily, but that they didn't do a U.S. tour. I think that was a part of the problem there. Again, they were focusing towards mainstream, trying to get mainstream rock hits and that sort of thing, trying to get on the radio. I don't think they should have been purposely trying to do that at that time. With all the merchandise that come out, you got a lot of kids coming too. It was the wrong direction. A lot of the kids grew up, of course, to become big Kiss fans and stayed on board. Some maybe did not, but I think it was just a wrong direction. They kind of lost their footing of what kind of music they should be doing. It was kind of a weird thing. I expected a tour. I really did expect a tour, but I thought it was very strange. I think that tour would have helped it a little bit, but I don't know how much. Again, and the whole thing, I think it's the company, the marketing was lacking too during this album. And then the album cover, amongst other things, and the single choices were kind of head scratchers.
Yeah, with me not being a fan at the time, it's impossible for me to kind of comment without being somewhat revisionist. I think they go away in 1978. You got the Love Gun Alive 2 tour is where they end. 2 years later, basically, they're coming back for the return of Kiss. And all of a sudden, they've done a cartoon, like comic, Phantom of the Park. They've done comic books, the second Marvel comic. Mm-hmm. And then there's all these 18-year-olds noticing that there are all these 7-year-olds with mom and dad in the audience, and that really sticks a fork in them. I think it's part of the natural life cycle of a band's about 5 years as well. They'd had their 5 years. The next big thing was already there. Music had changed. It happened to a lot of the groups at the same time that they're falling apart internally. Look at Nugent and Derek St. Holmes. Look at Aerosmith, Joe Perry, and then Brad leaving, and Kiss, Peter going, and then Casablanca blowing up, and them, needing to tour, but needing the subsidy to tour. And they got the subsidy to tour Europe, and they lost money. And they got the subsidy to tour Australia, and they lost money. They all the same sins that had damaged them during Dynasty. They'd lost so much money touring the U.S. in 1979 with the downturn of the economy. But I think the biggest thing is that those music fans, the demographic of record-buying public, did not like going to a show and seeing a bunch of 70 years old with mom and dad. But that's all I could do, and that's probably revisionist. Again, I wasn't there, and I know a lot of people became fans at that age. Mark?
Well, in one way, I can say that that's probably true because I can take it from somebody who, who didn't have revisionist, information, but that was my sister. She was there during all these times and was around and going to shows. And I think the problem was it was an experiment that went wrong for them, because by the time they got to this point in their career, their audience that started with them back in 74 and stuff like that, they're getting older now, right? And as your audience gets older, they stop spending more money on music, and you want to go back and get the younger audience now. So this was a very planned, I think, that they were trying to capture the young audience there. Because they were starting to realize, or thought in their mind at least, that these older people are going to start, abandoning them and going maybe to other things, or just not injecting as much money as they did into KISS when they were younger now. So they have to go into a younger one. Kids can always get money from their parents for something, and they were hoping that they were going to be buying KISS stuff. That's why they did the movies and all the merch and all that stuff. They weren't putting those things out for the 30-year-old guy or the 25-year-old guy. They were doing it for the 10-year-olds and for the 11-year-olds and that. They weren't gunning for the people that were with them from the beginning. There's no way in hell they thought that. Okay, so that was their experiment, and the experiment failed because not only did they lose their older fan base, a lot of them, but they didn't pick up anything along the way. Some of the kids maybe just bought that one record and they were on to something else. Because like Lonnie said, there was AC/DC, there was Priest, there was all kinds of bands coming up. Van Halen were doing good still, and lots of other things you could pick.
Rush.
Rush too. So why would you go and pick Unmasked?
Yeah,
it was an experiment that failed.
Yep. So how does Unmasked rank to the other albums that we have refocused in this ongoing series? The next one, of course, will be probably Alive or Asylum left for this year.
Right.
But right now, at the bottom of the pile is Hot in the Shade with a cumulative score of 14.34, followed by Animalize on 18.16, followed by Sonic Boom on 19.45, followed by today's entry, Unmasked is better than Sonic Boom, according to this panel, on 19.65. And it doesn't hold a candle to Unmasked, which jumps up to 23. And then KISS, Hotter Than Hell, and Dressed to Kill are on 24.
Wait a minute. You said Unmasked was 23.
Did I? Oh, yeah. Dynasty. Sorry.
Okay, there you go.
Right. Okay. Trying to read and talk at the same time, Mark, is kind of challenging at the end of a 2-hour show. You know how I hate long shows, but that's 2 hours. That's the show today. That's our ranking of this album and refocusing on it with a whole bunch of multimedia to bring to the table as well. What do you think of Unmasked? What did you think of it if you were a fan in 1980? What did you think then, and how does your opinion change or stay the same today, 45 years later? I think they've done a fantastic job with the celebration of the album and the special vinyl. I put up that Mexican copy of the multi-swirl because that's one of the best looking KISS collectibles in terms of vinyl. It's lucky to own a couple of copies. One was that scan that I put up, and the other one was not as good, just like some of the new splatter presses as well. But those look fantastic. They could do a great super deluxe box set of this album. But again, we'll settle on just getting anything this year like that. All right, that's it for now. Chime in wherever you've listened to this show with your comments, your thoughts about what we've said today, and what you think are the great parts of Unmasked and the not so great parts, and what you enjoyed if you got to hear these songs live. But for now, from Ken, from Mark and myself, Lonnie and myself, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for spending time listening to the KissFAQ podcast today. All sales are final. There are no refunds. If you'd like, look us up on Facebook or come over to the message board and discuss the topics we've broadcast today. Don't forget to hit subscribe wherever you've listened to this show, and a like would very much be appreciated. We hope you'll join us again, but until then, remember, life's a radio. Turn it up to 10.